Today I'm going to be turning this £15 Nerf blaster into a realistic looking Star Wars prop. The very first thing I did is take out all the screws so that I could break the gun down into all the different tiny pieces. The two main pieces break in half, and then there's lots of other smaller pieces as well. I knew I wanted the main gun to be black with lots of bits of silver detail, so I separated all the parts into bits that I wanted to be the two different colours. To spray paint the two halves I just lay them down flat, but for some bits I needed to get to all sides of them because they couldn't break in half like the gun. So for these bits I tied some string around them and then hung them from a washing line so I could spray paint all around them at the same time. I started on the two main halves of the gun. I just gave these a nice even coat of black and rotated it slightly so I could get to all the angles. And then for the hand grips and some details on the barrel, I painted these bits silver. I also painted some of the internal pieces because if you look down the barrel of the gun, for example, you could see the orange, so I had to paint all those bits as well. This was my crude technique of just hanging bits from the washing line. This just meant I could paint the whole thing at once. Once everything was dry, I did a second coat and then it was ready to put back together. Then came the very difficult task of reassembling everything. I don't know much about mechanics or engineering, so reassembling the whole trigger system was really difficult. The big pieces fit into place pretty easily so I could see where they went, but there were some really small internal pieces that were quite tricky to get back together. Eventually I figured it out, and I even managed to get the LEDs to light up when you pull the trigger again. I was expecting to break this during the painting process, so it's just a bonus that still worked. At this point I tried to put on some safety goggles and they didn't fit properly, and then I did some more metal cutting and then realised I probably should wear them. The elastic band had stretched since the last time I'd used them, so it wouldn't fit on my head, so this is about 3 minutes of footage of me trying to work out how to put them back on. The reason I was cutting the metal is because I wanted to put some extra weight into the gun. Nerf guns are very plastic and light, and because it's a film prop I wanted it to have some proper weight to it. So I cut off some bits of metal from an old tool we had, and then I also hot glued a load of screws and other hardware into the gaps in the plastic where there was nothing originally. This just helps to add some extra weight to make it feel more realistic. Once I'd added as much weight as I possibly could to the gun, then I started to put everything back together. Here you can see this is what the gun looked like with just the basic coats of paint, so I had some silver parts and some black parts. It's already looking a lot better than when it was orange originally. Next I did a technique called weathering. I learnt this from a video by Adam Savage. He's one of the guys that was the presenters of Mythbusters for a while, and he worked at ILM as a prop maker, so he knows his stuff. Essentially you just take a cloth or something and rub some silver spray paint onto the edges of the gun. It kind of gives it like a worn metal look, as if some of the metal's been scratched off, and it turns the very sort of flat black colour of the whole gun into a sort of very worn, beaten up and used replica. There's no real right or wrong way to do this, so I ended up just kind of covering it until I thought it looked right. I also took some of the black paint and then rubbed it onto the end of the gun to kind of give it like a burnt look. Again, this is just emphasising the fact that it's really well used and it's been shot a lot of times. And it came out really well, I was really happy with it. Then when I finished painting I realised that the gun actually had a load of Star Wars logos and writing on it, so obviously I didn't want that, so I ended up sanding it off. Unfortunately I only figured this out after I painted it, so I had to do some of the painting again. I just used a rough grit sandpaper to kind of file off all the material, and then I used a finer one to kind of smooth it down so it wasn't really beaten up, and then painted those bits black again. I had to redo some of the weathering in those areas, but it didn't take too long. And then to add some final detail I just got a really thin brush and just went into all the grooves and things and painted some extra detail onto the gun. This last step really brought it to a finished product, and I was really happy with how it turned out. And this is what it looks like. You might already know this, but the whole reason I'm making these props is for a Star Wars film that's coming up in a few weeks. We're shooting it in July and then it's going to be edited and everything in the following months. I'm hoping to be able to release it about September time, so stay tuned because there's going to be lots of videos about it coming very soon.